So now we've got the core of our game built, we can go ahead and start building the implementation in the browser. So Jest comes bundled with a library called JS DOM, which is actually a mock for the browser DOM. So we can use a lot of the API that's provided to manipulate DOM. So we don't have to install anything separate. We've got everything in one place, which is pretty awesome. That's one of the great things about Jest. So we'll start with, we want to render a grid. So we can say should display cells. So because it comes bundled, that actually expose it. So we can just say document body, and we can start adding DOM elements. So provided we have an ID of grid. So this is our starting point. So we would expect document query selector all, say, because we want to make sure we're getting the right number. Let's, for our cells, let's wrap them in a container. Let's say we should have one element, and we need to create a function, so we'll call it drawgrid, or cells from grid. Let's just say drawgrid, and let's pass in an array of cells. Yep, fail because drawgrid does not exist. Yeah, that fails. So what we can do here is, let's get the grid element again. Get element by ID. We'll say grid. Then we can say container. Container. Excellent. So we've described that we want a div. So we're creating a container. Now we're passing in some cells. Let's just duplicate this. We'll call each cell should have a cell class, and that should equal 1 because we're passing a dead cell. Yep, that fails. Yep. So this is starting to get a little bit messy. It's going to be a big function, it seems. So let's go ahead and tweak things. Any duplication, get element by ID, create element, div. This is repeated. I think we should create a helper function, create element, and we're attaching a cell, a class name. We're just going to be using divs, so we can do this. Create element container and cell. Create element cell. Yes. So let's slim this down a bit. Display should be display one dead cell. Let's duplicate this and call it dead to equal 1. Yeah, failed. We want to know if it's alive or dead. So it'll be, say, cell equals 0, then dead or alive. Oops. Cell. Call it element or L. Right, because it's not cell, it's cells. Haha. Let me see, cell 0. Yeah, right. Aha. So we've got uncovered lines. That's because our condition is alive or dead. So we can actually duplicate this test and say with one live cell. Excellent. And then we've got full code coverage there. Next, let's just duplicate this. Let's say 2 by 2, so that's 4. So let's just say 4 cells because we tested live or dead. Should display 4 cells. Let's just mix it up a bit. So container should, we've already tested that, so we don't need to test that. Let's say a length to equal 4 and this one to equal 2, and let's just duplicate that and say dead is 2. We're only receiving 1 because we've hard coded that, so we need to loop over. So we've got the container and we've got the append shell, so what we need to do now is cells dot, let's just put for each. So instead of cells 0, we can put cell, and because this is kind of a side effect, we'll actually, we need to move that up. Yes. So looking at our tests again, this one, we can probably get rid of that, you know. Don't really need to keep it. So because we've got an array and we actually need to slice that up into columns, so we need to, let's say row, actually row. So we should have 2 rows of 2 elements. So a row should be 2. Container. So we're not going to attach to the container. I think this is going to have to be a side effect. And because we've learned earlier that we can deduce which is the first column because the index should be a modulus of 0. So we could say if plus we need to get get the square root of the cells. So if, so we need the index as well. So cell index. So if index modulus width is exactly 0, we'll create a new row equal, and we'll use our helper, which is create element, and we'll call it row, and then container should be row attach append element, container dot append child, yeah, row. Yes, yes, excellent. That's pretty good. And let's check if it updates. So we can switch these around. And let's just copy these. So that should be the same. And it fails. Receive 2. This is because when we're drawing a grid, we're constantly getting the grid element. So we need to reset the grid element. Yes. So now that's our draw grid.